USC opened up spring practice this week, and depending when you're watching this video, they may have had one or several practices under their belt. And what we're most interested in keeping up with is the quarterback competition. If you look around the landscape of college football, there really isn't a bunch of high kind of level quarterback competitions going on right now, at least not true competitions in my opinion. We got Michigan, and then you got a few other schools that are saying it's a competition, even though I don't really think it's that much of a competition. But I think the USC quarterback competition is a true competition, and at least for us, is going to be one of the most we're going to be one of the most talked about storylines, talked about quarterback topics throughout the offseason, because I think it's something that's going to extend through fall camp. And Coach Raleigh came out and talked about like they're going to let the guys compete. So I want to talk about Miller Moss and Jayden Maiava. I want to go through each quarterback and kind of talk about what they bring to the table, what they've done in the past, and how they can fit into this offense. Again, I think it's going to be a very hard-fought battle. I don't think we get a quarterback named starter after spring. I think it continues to go out into fall camp. Maybe I'm completely wrong. I'm just totally guessing there, right? So let's talk Miller Moss first. Entering year 4, plenty of experience in college, not a lot of experience playing, but plenty of experience in college, right? 2021, 2022, 2023, he's been a backup the majority of the time, actually all the time, besides that one start he made in the Holiday Bowl. And up until the Holiday Bowl, the only playing time he got was when Dart got banged up in 2021, and then some mop-up duty in 2022 and 2023 behind Caleb Williams. And he did exactly what you wanted him to do. Had a few touchdowns, took care of the football, was efficient, was very accurate in his passes, did exactly what you wanted him to do. And then when the Holiday Bowl comes around, that's when he kind of just blew up, right? 6 touchdowns, 370-something yards in the air, and just kind of blew up and did exactly what you wanted him to do. He showcased his ability once that Holiday Bowl, I think it was a Holiday Bowl, correct me if I'm wrong, I know he was the MVP of the bowl, but once that bowl came around, he did exactly what you want him to do, and maybe scared off a few potential transfer quarterbacks who were looking to transfer in. But still, even with that, there's still a lot of unknown. He played great in the bowl game, but you always want to take bowl games with a grain of salt. So there's a lot of unknown about Miller Moss. If he can repeat what he did in the bowl game, then absolutely, you're in a good spot, right? But for spring camp, what you want to see is him continue to grasp the offense. It's year 4 for him, I guess year 3 in Riley's offense, so he should have a good understanding of it. The ball should be coming out quickly, and he should be able to throw with anticipation, making checks and reads at line of scrimmage when he needs to. Let's, real quick, before we move on to Maiava, let's look at what 247 said about him coming out of high school. I know it was a few years ago, so you need to take it with a grain of salt. But again, we only have limited film of what Moss can do besides the Holiday Bowl that this past year. So let's just look at what they said coming out of high school. Okay, so I forgot who exactly said this, so I apologize, 247. But let's look at what they said. A pure pocket passer with one of the quickest releases in the country. A very cerebral quarterback with a great feel for the position. Extremely poised, never looks nervous or hurried, has an advanced feel for throwing with timing and anticipation, shows good arm strength and can rip throws through tight windows, can continue to improve athletically but has good pocket mobility, can move around, buy time, and keeps his eyes down. Changes speed and throws with touch and is very accurate down the field. Plays with toughness and will stand in the pocket and take a shot to get the ball out. Projects as an impact upper tier Power 5 starter and a future mid-round NFL draft pick. They actually compared him to Drew Brees. I don't know if they still do this, but 247 used to have a comparison to an upper-level quarterback for higher-level QBs coming out of high school. But that's right there is exactly what he showed in the bowl game. Stood in the pocket, took some shots, was able to throw with anticipation and timing, and put the ball exactly where he needed to. I think that's an overlooked quality in a quarterback is throwing with feel. A lot of quarterbacks have strong arms, but it's hard to throw with feel. It's hard to know if I should throw a 2-ball, a 1-ball, or a 3-ball, depending on the route and depending on the coverage. That's something that Moss showed. So I think with his experience in college, even though he hasn't had a ton of reps and games yet, he has a lot of experience running that offense, a lot of experience in Riley's system, just in college in general. Right? So my main takeaway for Moss right now as he's starting this competition with Maiava is he's had success when given the opportunity. Backup position, starting position of the bowl game. Not a lot of playing experience, but plenty of college experience entering year 4. All right, so let's talk about Jayden Maiava, and then we'll kind of compare the two and wrap this video up. Maiava is a guy who kind of blew up on the scene this past year. He's entering year 3 in college. He was a redshirt freshman last year at UNLV, was the highest rated recruit according to 247 Sports that UNLV has signed in their history. And he was kind of going back and forth. We have some relationships with some UNLV insiders, if you will. And at one point it was, okay, he's for sure transferring. And then it was like, okay, he's coming back. And then of course he ended up transferring. The Georgia news came out. Then right after that, it was USC, right? So he started as the backup this past year in 2023 to Blumfield, who I was really high on. But shortly after the beginning of the season, Maiava takes over and didn't look back. He had 17 touchdowns passing, 3 on the ground, 3,000 yards passing, and then 277 yards on the ground. He's a bit bigger than Moss. Moss is like that 6'1", 205 range, right? Kind of that Drew Brees comparison that the 247 had out there. Maiava is about 6'4", 220. Bigger cat, more athletic, going to use his legs a bit more, kind of making all the sexy throws, throwing off angles, off platform, and having a bunch of different arm angles. But he blew up last year on Mountain West and was probably the best quarterback in the Mountain West and one of the best quarterbacks in the G5. So with that said, though, there's still question marks about him. He has more experience playing than Moss, but again, it's in the Mountain West. But the offense that he was in, there is some similarities with Riley's system. You want to go fast, you want to get up in line of scrimmage, you want to play quickly. He had that go-go offense with offensive coordinator Brendan Marion over at UNLV. He does a great job. So let's take a little bit deeper dive into Maiava and kind of what he did well and what he maybe wants to improve on. So at UNLV, they're pretty even with throwing the ball off play action and throwing the ball off a regular straight drop back. 45% of his throws were off play action, 55% were just straight drop back passes. So I think that's good, especially for Riley's offense. I think that shows that he has ability that you can use play action if you need to, or you can go straight drop back if you need to. But at the same time, he was much better off play action. He had 11 touchdowns, only 3 picks off play action. His yards per attempt were 9.9. So he took care of the ball. He ripped the ball downfield, and he had more of his touchdowns off play action despite throwing the ball less off play action, if that makes sense. On his straight dropbacks, he had 6 touchdowns, 7 picks, 8 yards per attempt. And he had nearly 40 more attempts on the straight dropbacks and play action, but his touchdowns were higher, his yards per attempt were higher, and his interceptions were lower on the play action. So what does that tell us? Well, it tells us that he relied on play action, which is fine. You see a lot of quarterbacks do that, but they were relying on kind of scheming open guys or getting guys out of position, which you see a lot in young quarterbacks. But at the same time, it showed that he was really successful off of play action. Also shows that, okay, the improvement area is probably when the defense drops 8 guys and there's no play action. It's a 3rd and 12. You can't use the threat of running the ball to get guys out of position. So that's where you want to improve on. But for a young quarterback, that's pretty common, right? And to go on to that point, he was much better versus the blitz than not blitz. And sometimes people will get confused because a lot of times if you get blitz, they qualify that with being hurried. Just because the defense is blitzing doesn't mean they're getting actual pressure. A lot of times quarterbacks prefer throwing when the blitz is coming because now it's one less defender defending the field. So say if a linebacker is blitzing from the inside position, now that position becomes open. You can dump it off to the tight end, just for example. But versus the blitz, he had 6 touchdowns, 1 pick. Against the defense when they didn't blitz, 11 touchdowns, 9 picks, right? So it tells us a similar story to play action. I think it just tells us this needs to develop. This leads to continue to read defenses and go through progressions and throw guys open, not being schemed open, even though Riley's a genius in scheming guys open, and that's just part of college football. But with that said, that's kind of his next steps in development. But the overall takeaway from Maiava, I was extremely high on him coming out of being in the transfer portal. I was excited to see him go to a higher level school to compete. Talented quarterback, can make all the throws. He provides athleticism as well. The only question is, does the success versus the Mountain West opponents transfer to the Big Ten opponents? I'm going to say, yeah, I think it probably will. Not saying he's going to win the competition, but I think he's a really talented quarterback that can have a lot of success. So the overall thoughts about the quarterback competition, regardless who wins, regardless who Riley picks, I think the quarterback's probably going to have success in Riley's system. Most quarterbacks do, and I think you got 2 really talented quarterbacks. Maiava, 1 year younger, has more experience, but it was in the Mountain West. Miller Moss, 1 year older, doesn't have as much experience playing, but has been in Riley's system a bit longer. So it wouldn't surprise me to see this quarterback competition go on into the summer and go on into camp. I would be surprised if they named a starter after the spring game or during spring sometime. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't have any insider information by any means, so I could be completely wrong here. But I think regardless, I think USC is in a really good position from the quarterback standpoint. I'm not saying there's going to be a Caleb Williams back there. I think you have good options. But USC fans or just quarterback fans or college football fans in general, let me know your thoughts. Who do you think wins this competition? And just what are your thoughts on each quarterback in general? And is this the most exciting quarterback competition going on right now? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If this is your first time tuning into the channel, we're just a big quarterback hub. We talk all things quarterbacks, especially the college football quarterback position. So please consider subscribing to the channel. Follow us along if the QB position is kind of your niche, and like the video, share, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. It does help. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. We'll see you next time. Peace.